Hello, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Village of Pinehurst Planning and Zoning Board meeting for December 2nd, 2021. I'm Jeremy Hooper, and I'll be serving as the chair tonight. I will point out that we have 8 board members present, and that serves as a quorum, and we're able to do business. And we are excited to welcome a new board member as filling an empty seat for us, Louise McCuro. Welcome, Louise. We're excited to have her. You're
Thank
on.
you. I'm excited to be here, so
Awesome.
a lot of fun.
Tell you what, we typically introduce ourselves. You know, we always start from this side.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves, starting with you, and let's take a second if you would explain your background, and then if everybody else on the board would just state a little
Okay.
something about their background as well.
I can. Louise McCuro. I live in the village. I have a background for more years than I want to say in city planning on different levels. So I'm really looking forward to this. I get to be on the other side of the table when I've been on, the staff for so many years. But that's it. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. Paul?
Paul Roberts, Louise, we're happy you're here as well, too. Welcome.
Thank you.
So my background, I was retired military, still work for DOD, and have done it for a long time. Thank you.
I'm Jack Farrell. I've been on the board since last January, I think, and been a resident off and on for the last 60 years, and also previously was on the Village Council and also on the Historic Preservation Commission. So welcome aboard. Your expertise will be very valuable, I think.
I've already introduced myself to you, but welcome to the board and look forward to working with you.
Hi, Louise. I'm Jules Latham. I'm the extraterritorial jurisdiction member on the board, so I actually live in the ETJ. I'm an environmental attorney, although haven't practiced for a while. And we've lived here full-time in the ETJ since 2007.
Hey, Louise, Matt Jones. I was the new guy, and now it's you, so that's exciting. I joined in January of this year. I'm a civil engineer by background, and that's what I do during the daytime. And I am excited to have you. I also have 2 little girls that are worth mentioning. They're 4 and 18 months. My wife is also worth mentioning, too, but yeah, she's awesome.
Hey Louise, welcome. My name is David Alzamora. I am an attorney in the area. I focus on real estate and estate planning primarily. Grew up in the area, moved back here with my wife in October of 2019. We have I guess he's almost 14 months old at home, and I'm also the chair of Board of Adjustment. So thanks for joining us.
Go, Alex.
We've obviously, during the recruitment process, had an opportunity to sit down several times with Louise, and we are still in the process of nailing down some schedules to complete Louise's onboarding, which, as you guys know, is where we will further inundate her with information and documents, and both about the duties of Planning and Zoning Board and Board of Adjustment members, but also about the organization itself.
Welcome again. You and I got to know each other a little bit in the interview process, but again, I've been here since 2003, with the exception of a 5-year stint in Augusta, Georgia, about 20 experience in the construction industry, mostly tied around Moore County at this point in time. So it's what I do most days, certainly more on the supply side, but we're excited to have you. And I'll point out that we are missing Philip Shoemaker tonight. He has an absence with us, but we're looking forward to you meeting him. He has an exciting reason for missing, as well as he's expecting a new one, so you'll get to meet him.
Today, he's present.
Today? I don't know the details, but we're thinking about him. So, of course, welcome Alex. You know, as always, I remind everybody that we are being videotaped, so please speak directly and clearly into your microphone today, so we're able to capture that. And we don't have anybody in attendance tonight, so I don't know if I'm going to just gamble to say we won't have any public comments, but the same will go there. And we're always going to follow the agenda as it's presented to us by staff tonight as well. So the first agenda item is the approval of minutes from our 11/4/21 regular meeting. Does anybody have any additions, modifications, or corrections?
Second.
Motion made by Sonia, second made by David. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none opposed, the minutes from the November 4, 2021 meeting are approved as written. The next agenda item is new business, and really it's a carryover new business as we want to discuss our vice chair position. And since then, we've had some discussions, and I hope maybe we're prepared to put forward a motion and any discussion involved. And can I call for a motion right now to seat a vice chairperson for our board?
I'll make a motion to seat Jack Farrell as the first vice chair for planning and zoning.
David Alzamora has made a motion to seat Jack Farrell as our first vice chairperson. Is there a second?
I'll second. I will vigorously second that motion.
Your microphone is on, Julia. Second by Jules Latham. Any discussion or any?
Congratulations, Jack. Looks like you got it.
Congratulations.
I
right?
suspect there'll be, hopefully there'll be a little chance to actually execute it, but I'd be more than happy to be your backup.
I'm sure there will be, and thank you, and I hope that's, I'm sure we'll see that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Well, welcome, Jack, to the vice chair position. And that's the end of new business. As we move on to general business, is there anything that we need to discuss from staff?
For a point of order, it is ceremonial, but we do need to invite the village clerk, Kelly Chance, up to officially swear in Louise as both a member of Planning and Zoning Board and Board of Adjustment.
Welcome, Kelly.
Left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand, and you will repeat after me. I, Louise Mercuro,
I, Louise Mercuro,
do hereby swear
do hereby swear
that I will support and maintain
that I will support and maintain
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as a member of the Board of Adjustment
as a member of the Board of Adjustment
and Planning and Zoning Board.
and Planning and Zoning Board.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Officially welcome. What other new business?
Well, I would let you guys know that, you know, it's been a little bit of a welcomed break probably for this board the past month or two, and now that we're back at full strength, and we've got some officer positions filled, so thank you, Jeremy, Jack now, and Julia is staying as the second vice chair position. I think there's going to be lots of work to do and roll our sleeves up in the coming new year, with the small area plans hopefully wrapping up and what that's going to entail in order to implement those, as well as what other fun applications we may have that come in the door at times. So there's going to be adequate opportunities for Darren and I to be in front of the board, and there will be a third public workshop for the small area plans as well that's still to be scheduled. Staff has been reviewing some of the latest drafts and providing comments to the consultant, so we're kind of stuck at that point right now. But very shortly, we feel like we'll be ready for a third public workshop, so we'll be able to see kind of what's happened since the last draft and the last workshop we had. This relates directly to the moratorium on the real estate development in both focus areas. So we'll be able to have a better timeline on that and when or if that needs to be extended or can be lifted based on what we need to do as village staff and planning and zoning board in order to make some solid recommendations to village council to get those implemented. So it will take quite a bit of work, so be ready.
You know you got a lot of work ahead of you. How much time is left on the current moratorium?
Extended for 90 days a month ago, so 60?
February?
I think it's toward the middle of February, I believe.
February? And how much more extension is allowed? If
It really depends on it's kind of one of those things, like reasonable is one of the terms that are used. So if it looks like the local government is still trying to move forward, then, it is what's reasonable in the time frame with that. There's going to be public hearings that are going to be needed, and we know what those time frames look like. With the notice of 10 and 25 days, with a recommendation by this board to another notice of 10 and 25 days to village council. So typically that's a 60-day process. It can be up to a 60-day process, I should say. Yeah, and there'll be a need for a lot of informational and work-related workshops to be conducted in order to have something ready for a public hearing, I would imagine.
Eric, do you know if the next workshop is still going to be a online Zoom-oriented, or whether they can actually have one here?
In person.
In person,
is what
okay, yeah, that'd be much preferable.
Obviously, that's one reason why we, when negotiating the contract, we did want that. Obviously, if we've learned anything the past well over a year now, things can change quickly. But that is the direction we're headed, yes.
Great.
Anything else from anybody on the board?
Did everyone have an opportunity to sign the ethics policy acknowledgement? We handled that last month, aside from Jack, who we missed, so we got that. Louise, we'll get yours with your onboarding, and we'll file that with the clerk. Get your microphone. It's all right.
How many people ended up doing the meeting online?
For the public workshops for the small area plan?
No, the one from Chapel Hill for the,
Oh, yeah, we just missed the deadline in getting Louise signed up. Staff, Matt, I believe you attended. Jack, you did too. We were very gracious that there was an offering for that, an affordable price. I would love that opportunity for more. We have some on-demand library options, not the same ones necessarily that some of you have been around probably for more than 3 years have witnessed. So because there's been a couple of changes, of course, 160D being the big thing that's changed since then. So there's a couple little things that have been updated since then that we plan on getting ready to roll out and share. We have some login, obviously, credentials that the village pays an annual subscription for, which again, they kind of, Jack, Matt, either one, I would welcome any input that you guys had, or anything you'd like to share from attending that workshop. But it's kind of, way on the, 30,000 foot level maybe, and there's other opportunities, as we're getting ready to have a Board of Adjustment meeting later. You guys are fortunate enough that you get to operate in a couple of different capacities. You really get to work a little, you're not stuck in a bubble, so to speak. So it's good to sharpen your pencil on, your duties and your roles, what's proper, what's improper when considering all those requests. But obviously with new staff and then with folks who've been here a while, it never hurts to get a little continuing ed Also, we are trying to, as, you know, at least before the end of last month, you know, the pandemic had seemingly kind of cooled down a little bit, looking at maybe bringing some folks in from the School of Government and hosting a workshop here. So maybe something could even come to fruition with some of our other local jurisdictions where we can all kind of get it together in one and really provide a little bit better of a training than what you can maybe get from a virtual workshop where you can maybe sit shoulder to shoulder with some colleagues and have some real meaningful discussion. And you hear what challenges other communities are facing. We're all, you know, obviously our boundaries sometimes go butt right up to one another, and we might be sharing the same concern, issue, or privileges, and it's good to talk that through and rely on other experience you have. So that is something that we're trying to keep a keen eye on and see what opportunities we can have in order to maybe invite those folks down.
Yeah, I thought it was good, and like you said, it came from broad, and it did narrow in. One of the things I appreciated particularly was, you know, the accessibility with that, the School of Government staff, and they put us in breakouts, and and people were asking questions during the presentation. I asked something about the short-term rentals and state regulations, and it must have been something the speaker said, because it triggered like 3 people asking the question at the same time. And they basically said that it's still TBD in the state, but it's something they're figuring out. Tell me, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. It was a good refresher in a way, and it, as you went through it, you thought of questions to ask. I don't think the ability to ask the questions and get answers was in that format. The electronic format doesn't always work very well, particularly when there's a lot of people and you're kind of trying to figure out electronically where you are, you know, what breakout room you're being sent to electronically. So I thought it was a good refresher. It prompted a lot of questions in my mind that I wrote down. I'd still like to get the answers. Maybe I use those contacts, as Matt pointed out, to actually directly get those questions answered.
Absolutely, always. I mean, that's what they're there for. You know, we as you know, zoning staff throughout the state use them daily, weekly. You know, we have the listserv that staff's a part of, where we bounce ideas off, and a lot of times the members there at School of Government will jump in where they feel it's appropriate. Also, if there's anything you have, I know I believe Matt, I've reached out to you at the conclusion of it, Jack. If you've got questions, you know, staff, we're always here. You know, if we can tell, you know, a lot of times you'll get certain answers, like with a topic as hot as short-term rentals right now. It's, you know, we'll let you know when the court decides, which is happening a lot, or if there's obviously been a change in the statutes, which, you know, has happened. It does appear that the session will be ending next week. My understanding that I'm part of a biweekly update call that the North Carolina chapter, the American Planning Association Legislative Committee hosts, so that's been very helpful the past 8 months. But I understand a motion to close the legislative session has been introduced, and I'll have an update on that tomorrow. So that would conclude the long session. The short session typically convenes around early spring, I believe. So it looks like, you know, there's no real big changes that may happen related to planning and development regulation that we need to adjust between now and that time. But that's another important topic to consider coming year. We will, you know, need to pivot potentially pending any new legislation that's adopted. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Any topics? Anything anybody wants to talk about? I'll try to make some up here. But no. Okay, well then, our next meeting date is January 6th, 2022, so this is wrapping up 2021. Thank you all, and it's a pleasure for this year and exciting, and I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving and a great holidays. So with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
By Matt Jones, second by Jack Farrell. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Nope. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Adjustment, scheduled for December 2nd, 2021. It is currently, we'll go with 4:35 PM. We do have a quorum present this afternoon, and notice was properly given for this meeting. I'll start by having our permanent members of the board introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Hello, I'm Julia Latham, and I'm the extraterritorial jurisdiction representative to the Planning and Zoning Board and a permanent member of the Board of Adjustment.
Hello, I am Jeremy Hooper.
I'm Jack Farrell.
And I'm David Alzamora. Let's see, we will go ahead and just follow the planned agenda as we have it right now. We will switch it up a little bit if we don't have any objections in just
We
one
have
moment.
an alternate sitting in for,
Not quite yet, but I will note Philip Shoemaker's absence. I think we can go ahead and focus on the approval of the November 4th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to, or are there any revisions or questions regarding those minutes? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the November 4th, 2021 regular meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the Board of Adjustment November 4, 2021 minutes as written.
Motion made by Jeremy Hooper. Do I have a second?
A second?
Second by Julia Latham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The November 4th, 2021 regular meeting minutes are approved. So the agenda has the public hearing up next, but for our purposes, I was going to go a little bit out of order, and unless there's any objections from the board, I'd like to go ahead and do agenda item number 4, general business board organizational matters next. Or does anyone have any objections to addressing that next?
No.
Perfect. Hearing no objections, we will go ahead and go with the board organizational matters. Before we get started with that, because we do have one permanent member absent, I'd like to go ahead and swear in one of our alternates so that they can serve as a voting member for this afternoon's meeting. Matt Jones is present this afternoon. Can I get a motion to get Matt sworn in so that he can participate as a voting member this afternoon?
I'm just going to ask, I don't believe we need to swear Matt in, because when Matt was sworn in to P&Z, he was also sworn in as a Board of Adjustment member. So I think we just have to have a motion to seat him and a vote.
Perfect. Can I have a motion to seat Matt Jones as a voting member this afternoon?
I move to accept Matt Jones seated on the Board of Adjustment for this meeting.
Motion made by Jack Farrell. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second made by Julia Latham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye. All opposed? Hearing no oppositions there. Matt, thank you for joining us this afternoon. You are seated as a voting member for this afternoon's meeting.
Thank you.
The rest of the board organizational matters here. So our previous meeting, we had a discussion. We are short a vice chair of the Board of Adjustment since we had a member step down. I wanted to postpone that meeting until we had as many permanent members present as possible. I also wanted to have the full voting board here in case, anybody had any opposition or if anybody wanted to step up. Does anybody currently have a motion that they would like to make for that vice chair position?
I'll make a motion to seat Jack Farrell as the Vice Chairman of the Board of Adjustment.
We have a motion by Jeremy Hooper to seat Jack Farrell as the vice chair for the Board of Adjustment. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Julia Latham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing no opposition there. Jack, congratulations. You are the vice chair of the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you.
Thank you for agreeing to help us out there. Hopefully it'll be sparingly, but
Correct.
I'll throw you in there occasionally. Just when I haven't
Don't
gotten any
feel
sleep the
obligated.
night before. All righty. So that concludes the board organizational matters, unless anybody else has any other issues there. Let's see here. So the next step would be to enter the public hearing. I move to recess the regular meeting and enter the public hearing. Can I get a motion to recess our regular meeting?
I move to recess the regular meeting and enter the public hearing.
Motion by Jack Farrell. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Julia Latham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are now entered into our public hearing. Let's see. So the purpose of today's public hearing is to receive testimony for a variance request from Section 9.2A, the tables of dimensional requirements for the property addressed at 160 Thunderbird Lane, further identified by Moore County parcel ID number 000-23301. This property is located within the R10 high-density residential zoning district. Specifically, the owners Norman and Julie Bennett are requesting a variance from the 30-foot minimum golf course setback to allow for approximately a 14.5-foot setback. If there's nothing further, Alex, if you're prepared to be sworn in. Let's see here. Alex, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Wonderful. Well, if you are ready, then proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, David. So as you clearly stated, public hearing number one is for the Board of Adjustment to receive testimony on a request to vary the 30-foot minimum golf course setback for the subject property addressed as 160 Thunderbird Lane and also identified as Moore County parcel ID number 000-23301. And again, it is located within the R10 zoning district, and the property owners are also the applicants, which are Norman and Julie Bennett. The public hearing that is being conducted right now is an evidentiary hearing, and that is because requests for variances are considered by North Carolina state statute a quasi-judicial decision, which means that judgment and discretion is used in applying the required standards of review and consideration by the board. The purpose of evidentiary hearings is to gather competent, relevant, factual evidence on the application and to not solicit broad public opinion. Anyone who does participate in these hearings must be sworn in and have to provide factual testimony and relevant evidence only, also limiting repetitious testimony. Staff, myself, will act as the initial witness tonight, and I will present some basic information and background on the request, as well as any other staff-provided exhibits into the record for consideration of the Board of Adjustment. The applicant and other witnesses can then be sworn in and provide other factual testimony on their application to the Board of Adjustment. Board members can listen and ask relevant questions, as well as assess any credibility of the testimony provided, remain impartial, and then may also make a motion and vote on the subject matter. At the conclusion of the hearing, of course, that decision must be made on the material that was presented and substantial evidence, and also adopt clearly findings of fact for the purpose of making that decision. As David also mentioned, that the hearing was duly posted and notice was given in line with state statute and the development ordinance. Here you'll see the public notification map that was sent out to the adjacent property owners, which was also provided in the board's material packet prior to the meeting. Here's an aerial map of the subject property. You'll be able to see that the subject property here is outlined in red. The tan lines represent building envelope or the building footprint of the existing structures. You can see that the subject property is surrounded by the golf course on three sides. The area with the call-out pointing right here to the sort of southeast corner is the subject area for the requested variance. The zoning of the surrounding properties, the residential areas are obviously largely zoned the same, R10 for high-density residential, and the golf course area is zoned RD for recreational development. The callouts also indicate the three property lines in which a golf course setback is applied to this particular property. So again, this request is before the board because the applicant is requesting to vary the 30-foot setback. The applicant, based on their submitted material, is proposing a plus or minus 14.5-foot setback in order to accommodate an addition of about 6 feet to the existing home. And as you saw in the previous slide, that the golf course setback is applied on those 3 sides as it is surrounded by Pinehurst Resort Course number 5. The remaining 2 setbacks, as the property does have 5 lot lines, are a 30-foot front setback here from the cul-de-sac, and then the R15 side setback applied where it abuts the adjacent residential property. This diagram depicts it a little bit clearer. So there are 4 30-foot setbacks applied to this property and 1 15-foot side setback. The subject lot was created as part of the original subdivision plat titled Phase 1, Unit 6 by Pinehurst, Inc. in 1972. 2 years later, in 1974, lots 163 through 173, which are the areas, the adjacent properties along Thunderbird Lane, were later reconfigured as shown on the recorded plat titled Phase 1, Unit 6A. And then finally, lots 163 and 165 were combined together as shown on the recorded plat titled Phase 1, Unit 6E, and that area is the subject area of the request. The property is just a little over a ½ acre in size, or about 24,818 square feet, which is obviously more than the minimum 10,000 square foot requirement in the R10 zoning district. All of these plats are included in the staff exhibits, and they are labeled Exhibits B, C, and D, respectively. Here's a snip image of them. You can kind of see how things progressed. On the left is a snapshot of the original plat. This was like 3 pages, as it was several lots when it was originally created. The middle plat, you'll see the reconfiguration slightly. The fainted dashed lines were the original property lines. The heavier marked darker lines are where the properties were reconfigured into the new lot lines. And then on the far right, in 1979, the recombination of lots 163 and 165. Records from the Moore County Tax Department and Register of Deeds indicate that the home was built about 1980. As most of us know, the village was incorporated in 1980, so the property does predate any adopted zoning regulations or golf course setbacks. The property was subsequently purchased by the current owner and applicant of this request in May of this year. The home also currently encroaches into that minimum 30-foot golf course setback at a distance, according to the survey provided, of about 20.55 feet. This makes it a legal non-conforming structure as it does predate the zoning requirements. As other legal nonconformities within the zoning jurisdiction of Pinehurst, the nonconformity is allowed to continue. However, it is not allowed to increase, which does afford the property a 20.55 foot setback on that subject property line. Here are some images kind of highlighting that existing encroachment. On the left, you can see the hashed area of the existing building footprint. The red triangular area is the existing encroachment area. The call out here from the provided survey shows that encroachment again at 20.55 feet. So to help depict what that legal non-conforming setback now is, that 20.55 feet, very approximately shown, I might add, by this red line that I added here. So that is inherently the new minimum golf course setback on this property line. The applicant is requesting to extend another approximately 6 feet. The image here to the left is the provided proposed floor plan by the applicant. So this red triangle does indicate the proposed additional encroachment, 6 feet being the dimension that extends down into the south. And they have provided, and I'll let the applicant speak more to this, that the total encroachment area is going to be approximately around 45 square feet. In addition, the applicant has submitted some photos of the golf course area as it surrounds the property, and I'll let them speak more to how these photos are situated and how the subject property is situated in relation to where these photos are. But again, the property is surrounded by course number 5, and the subject property line is near the fairway of hole number 7 and turns on the other side to where the tee box is for hole number 8. These are all labeled by the applicant and provided to you guys in your packet. And of course, as these photos get discussed, we'll be able to bring these up on the screen for visual. Standards of review. So Board of Adjustments throughout the state of North Carolina have ready-made standards in which they must apply any request for variances. And a Board of Adjustment shall not grant a variance unless and until it makes the following findings. They all revolve around hardships. Number 1 is unnecessary hardship would result from strict application of the ordinance. 2, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner. And finally, that the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. Action allowed by the Board of Adjustment, what they can do after conducting the duly advertised public evidentiary hearing, they may have the authority to subpoena witnesses and request additional information if desired. In order to provide or gain that extra information, they are able to continue the public hearing to a time, date, place certain. They may grant the requested variance, with conditions. Any such conditions must be reasonably related to the request, and of course, finally, the Board of Adjustment may deny the requested variance. Any of these decisions to either grant with conditions, or deny must be accompanied by the findings of fact stating the reasons why the request does or does not meet each of those standards. And it's very important, as we seat 5 members here, to understand that the granting of any variance request must require a concurring vote of 4/5 or 4 out of 5 members. So formally at this time, staff would like to submit the following into the record. Staff exhibits that were prepared in the packet A through D, this presentation, as well as the provided applicant's exhibits E through I. That'll conclude my presentation on the request. I'm happy to answer any questions on the material that's been provided to you by staff.
I guess before we continue, there's a few questions I have for the board, just to get out of the way. Just disclosures. The parties in this case are entitled to an impartial board. A board member may not participate in this hearing if you have a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome, or a close relationship with any affected person. Do any of the board members have any partiality to disclose that they should recuse from this hearing? None? Perfect. Have there been any ex parte communications? If there have been any ex parte communications between the board members and any applicants, that should be disclosed now. Anything to be disclosed by anybody? Perfect. Let's see. I think we're good there. Are there any objections to any of the exhibits?
One other, I do have a disclosure that I did visit the site yesterday morning, walked around the complete facility, the structure, and also the golf course on both sides, observing the relationship of the structure to the golf course and also the vegetation. I saw no one or spoke to no one at that time.
Okay. I don't see any issue with that. Just as a reminder to everyone here tonight, our discretion is limited. The board has to base its decision upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record, as Alex, I believe, mentioned at the beginning. A quasi-judicial decision is not a popularity contest. It is a decision constrained by the standards in our ordinance and the facts presented in this hearing. If you will be speaking as a witness this afternoon, please focus on facts and standards that are applicable, not any opinions that you may have. Participation in this hearing is limited. The meeting is open to the public. Everyone is welcome to watch, but parties with standing have rights to participate fully, so those parties with an interest in this hearing would be able to participate. other individuals may serve as witnesses when called by the board, or if individuals might suffer special damages from any results from this hearing, they could also participate. I can't really think of anything further right now. Do you have anything to say, Jules?
No, I have a question for Alex about the evidence before us, which may be appropriate now or perhaps after the applicants have, so you just let me know, Alex. But normally when we see similar applications, we have testimony offered from the resort, and that does not appear to be in the packet that was before us. So if now is the appropriate time, if you could let us know whether or not the resort has weighed in on this matter, or we can table it till a more appropriate time.
Now is fine. I'm sorry you're having to turn and face me while I'm over here at the podium, but thank you for that. So I have had email correspondence with Bob Farron, I'm providing that testimony now, in which he did state that Pinehurst Resorts does not object to the requested variance. I do have that email available if the board would like to see that and have that formally submitted as evidence into the record, if that is needed in addition to my sworn testimony.
I have no objection to Alex's sworn testimony. Does anybody feel as if that email needs to be admitted?
No, that's fine.
Fine.
Here, under
I do
oath,
have one
Alex.
question on staff on the presentation to date. The one map shows the outline of the golf course, and in red shows the outline of the property. What is the black line here? That looks like it's left over from previous plot lines.
So of course, like just about every single one of the maps that we generate and prepare for you guys, it's based on GIS data, which
Okay, this is a Moore County.
It is. It's very approximate. It is meant to outline. There's sometimes overlaps when it's based on tax information. If there's a plat that's been submitted and recorded, sometimes this information isn't updated until there's a new deed that's also filed to go with it. My hunch is that the residential lot boundary is obviously correct. The original golf course boundary is what you see in the black, in which a new deed was not subsequently filed prior or following whenever. But 1979 was the recombination of those two lots, so I'm thinking that's where the overlap is.
So our concern is the property line is in red, is that correct?
Correct.
Could you also show again the property line which would be in effect today with the additional red line on the setback? Yeah, this one here,
On the right?
right. So that's today's 20.55 non-conforming but legal setback, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that applies for the entire side, that entire space?
Correct. From where it intersects here with the rear setback to where it would intersect here with this other 15-foot side setback.
So in other words, the garage could be extended back to the 20.55 line, is that correct?
So anything as far as the principal dwelling could be extended to anywhere on that red line, again, from the point here where it intersects with the rear setback to the front setback. So this area here is what I'm mentioning of the
That's the
garage area.
garage,
So
right.
it could be, the property owner
Any
could
part of
expand it that way.
the dwelling, current dwelling could be extended to that line with no variance required, is that correct?
Correct. Approximately location of that red line. Again, I didn't survey that.
And there's a balcony above the area that happens to be encroaching, and that could be built up to the second story with no variance required currently, is that correct?
As long as it met the other restrictions, yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, one other question. You mentioned that it requires 4 votes to either accept or deny, is that correct? I
Only to
believe-
grant.
Only to accept?
Correct.
You can deny with a simple majority, is that
Correct.
correct? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Did you have a slide, Alex, that showed the planned addition and how that sits against that setback? Yes, there.
So if you see this area right here at the top corner, I don't know if you're able to see the cursor. That is where the existing encroachment is.
Yes.
The request is to go 6 feet out here on the base of the triangular shape, and then extend this way, as indicated on the plan and the material that was provided to you guys in your packet that doesn't have my markings on it. And then, of course, back to that existing non-conforming area. So this area here is what's being requested to encroach further.
Got it.
And so therefore, a new red line, similar to the previous slide, could be drawn, and that entire building could extend to that 14.55, whichever close.
If a blanket 14.55 or the 6-foot
approved.
encroachment were, yeah,
I got
exactly.
it, okay. And, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're still.
I was going to just mention the AC units are on that side and currently are in the encroached area. Now, I know AC units, according to the PDO, can extend 5 feet into a setback. So they will, if they stay in the same relative position, they will extend further than the 14.55 to the golf course. Is that correct? Or they're allowed to go 14.55 minus 5 feet, the AC units. Is that correct?
So that allowed encroachment, and depending on what the setback would be, would still
Right.
be permitted, correct?
Okay.
So Alex, for clarity, is this the only material provided by the applicant that's detailing any sort of addition? Any other plans, any other evidence that would represent the hardship?
As far as I'm aware of, the applicant can obviously answer that, but the material that I have received has been forwarded on to the board for consideration.
Just for my
which
clarity,
includes
this
the
is all
floor
we've
plan.
got at this point in time. Okay, thanks.
Questions for staff right now? Perfect. So who in the audience plans on speaking this afternoon? You two, would you two mind stepping up to the microphone? Either the table or that one. I guess if you'll both be up here, you can have a seat up here. We'll go ahead and get you sworn in. And you please state your names and address for the record.
My name is Julie Bennett, and my residence is 160 Thunderbird Lane.
My name is Randy Hunt, and my residence is 155 Benson Way in Aberdeen.
Okay, I think, yeah, we'll get that one.
Chairman, just due to the recent circumstances, I was not familiar with who the applicant was. I am familiar with Randy Hunt. We've known each other for 10-plus years. We have not had any discussions on this application, nor do I have any sort of reason to gain from this. But I do know Randy Hunt for 10-plus years.
Thank you for disclosing. Does anybody have an issue with that? Perfect. Mr. Hunt, if you would, since we have the microphone on now, reintroduce yourself.
Again, my name is Randy Hunt. I am with Randy Hunt Construction. I am her contractor, and my address is 155 Benson Way, Aberdeen, North Carolina.
Thank you. Now, do you both solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All righty, now that we are sworn in, we do have the applicant, Ms. Bennett, in front of us. She will now present evidence and any arguments in support of her request. As a reminder, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards that we have before us. You have been sworn in. You can go ahead and begin with anything that you have whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Julie Bennett, and my husband and I came to Pinehurst in January of this year to find our forever home for our retirement to spend here in Pinehurst. We were extremely pleased when we found such a great property in the heart of Pinehurst. Since this home was built in 1980, which was prior to current day regulations, we knew that our home was probably going to need some renovations. Working with Randy Hunt, we have come up with a plan to adapt the current property to current day lifestyle, the way that people live nowadays. After discussing this plan with an architect, it was determined that an addition to the backside of the property would be necessary. Discussions concluded that the addition would need to take place on the southeast side or the 7th hole side of the property due to the errant number of golf balls that are received on the northwest or the 8th hole side of the property. If you would refer to the pictures number 4, 5, and 6 that Alex had displayed. These pictures here, they show the view from the tee box. Those right there. So those are a view to show that we get a lot of errant golf balls that come into the property because the tee box is so close right there to the property. Within the last 60 days, for example, we've collected over 115 golf balls just in the last 60 days. So we get a lot of activity on that side, so it's really, safety was an issue for expanding the property on that side. Expanding the home on the southeast side of the property would also let the view from the golf course remain unchanged. So if you can refer to the other 3 pictures that were 1, 2, and 3, that's the view down the 7th hole fairway. And that shows you that really the view of our house is protected from all of the trees, the large screening of trees that we have on that side of our property. So you really don't even see our property from the golf course. We appreciate the fact that the setbacks are in place to keep a pleasing aesthetic. Our property is 0.56 of an acre, or 24,394 square feet. The golf course frontage of the property includes a total of 507 linear feet, due to the fact that it's on 3 sides of the course. Applying the 30-foot setback restriction is equal to about 15,210 square feet. This means that 62% of the property is prohibited from reasonable use, just on the golf course side. The addition that will encroach the setback restriction is approximately just 45 square feet that we are asking for. This is less than 0.3 or 1% of the property. Thank you for your time and your consideration in this matter. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Bennett. I'd like to, I guess if our board has any questions, I will start on the right. Jack, if you'd like to begin, we can work our way from right to left, unless anybody wants to start first.
Alex, can you go back to the floor plan?
Just for clarification, you mean the proposed floor
Yes.
plan? Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Mrs. Bennett, can you, or Mr. Hunt, can you let me know what room is that you're asking to do the expansion?
That would be the kitchen.
It's a kitchen, okay.
and that the design of the house would have windows on that side of the house. Hence why we considered the safety issue of the golf balls coming on that side. So that's why we had placed the kitchen on that side of the property, because if we put it on the other side, then it just wouldn't be safe with the windows to have all the errant golf balls.
And is that currently the, I don't know what scale of remodel you're doing here. Is that currently the location of the kitchen, or are you kind of overhauling?
We're overhauling
Okay.
the first floor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just wanted to piggyback that question. So currently today, the home, is that where the kitchen is in the house today?
No.
Okay, can you give us an idea on, from what we see here, possibly where the kitchen is in relative to the floor plan?
If you look on the plan where Alex has got his little arrow pointing at, that's where the kitchen's on that side right now.
Currently there today?
Yeah,
So
today.
the request would be to move it to the back side of the
Yes.
home?
Yes.
Okay.
And one reason to move it, because it's almost like a galley, the way it's set up right now. It's a real tight kitchen, and she's wanting an open floor plan. And that's one of the reasons we want to move it to the other side. And the other reason is trying to add or even bring it out on the other side, on the side where it's at now, is because of issues with the second floor. We've had a lot of problems with load bearings, dealing with the architect or the designer. We were trying to come up with a way that we can make it work because of the plumbing issues. Like I said, the other thing was load bearing, and as Jack had implied, with the on that side there's a roof, a flat rubber roof, which we want to cover that roof up and extend it on out to where we can make that kitchen work. But the biggest thing was like with plumbing issues, structural issues. We cannot move on the other side of the house because the way the house is set up. We're trying to incorporate beams, structure, and load bearing points. We'd have too many problems that we can't work out.
So just for clarity, if you don't mind me walking through that today, you're doing a complete remodel, so a complete gut of the home, right? So you're able to pull out basically any wall at this point in time. However, there are certain structural beams involved currently in the house that you would not be able to move.
Correct.
To allow the kitchen to be built in a similar spot. Is that-
Correct.
I'm not putting words in your mouth, but that's what you're trying to say.
Correct.
Okay, but I'm putting words in your mouth.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Just for clarity.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I have some more questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and let someone else go.
Okay, well, you may have a number of the golf balls from me. I don't know if they have my logo
I have a
on.
box. If you want to come identify,
I'm
a
sure
lot
you
of
do.
different
That's-
markings on the balls.
That's the benefit of living on a golf course in Pinehurst. Now, in visiting the site, I believe that my observation is a good deal of the vegetation is actually on the golf course property, both trees and some other vegetation, particularly on the 7th hole side, which is the south side. So I'm rather surprised that you want to move the house 14 feet away from the golf course on that side. I guess anytime you're 150 to 200 yards away from a tee box on the left side, you're going to get balls coming in against the house. That's just the way golf is. So I don't see that the vegetation that you claim blocks the house is really necessarily always going to be there. And the reason I say that is that the golf course, particularly over the last few years, you may have noticed they've redone a number of their golf courses substantially. That goes with number 2 and number 3 and so forth, and have moved fairways and removed trees and removed vegetation and rerouted the course. They could end up in time being, if you were to be granted this variance, you would end up being 14 feet away from a golf course, an active golf course, without any vegetation between you and the golf course, because there's no guarantee that the golf course wouldn't use that land to reroute the course, and they have done so quite actively in the last few years. The other part that concerns me is that, quite honestly, I mean, there are literally thousands of golf course lots in Pinehurst, thousands, by design, as you well know. And in fact, there's many properties with similar characteristics as yours, particularly any property, the way Diamond had laid it out with cul-de-sacs in between the holes. Almost all those properties have similar characteristics. That is, that there's golf courses on two and sometimes three sides. So this is not a unique situation in any way, shape, or form. This is very common within Pinehurst. Almost every golf course has a number of properties with similar characteristics. So I just wanted to make sure you know that this is not a unique situation, that this, in fact, lot has some of the characteristics of many courses, or many lots within Pinehurst. That's important because it doesn't seem that there's a uniqueness to your environment. The other part is that the lot was built close to the golf course, probably, and you may have noticed that one of your appendices, your Exhibit D, the lower left corner talks to a set of restrictions that are applicable. That's right down there in the lower left corner. Those restrictions are part of your deed, and in fact, they are what Diamond had put together as their version of our PDO, if you will, at the time, with various restrictions such as fences can be no higher than 6 feet, and it also had setbacks. The setback that was applicable to this property when it was sold initially was 30 feet on the golf course side. Of course, by the time it was built, Diamond Head was bankrupt in the 1980s, and there was little discipline in actually enforcing any of their regulations. But there is a deed regulation that says this golf course, this property should be, any structure should be 30 feet away from the golf course. So it's kind of incorrect to say that there was no restrictions at the time it was built. Let me just put it that way. My primary concern is that this is not a unique situation. In fact, this is, in fact, very common within Pinehurst to have golf course setbacks on 2 or 3 sides. There's quite a number of lots where this would apply. And to be 14 feet away from a golf course is really close, to tell you the truth. And particularly if the vegetation were not to be so thick, you'd end up with golf balls against your house quite often, to be honest with you. So it's something to think about. That's it for this point.
Alex, is there any way you don't happen to have a count of lots with 3 golf course sides, do you?
I don't. The closest thing, and I'm not real sure of the accuracy, so I would not like to present it to the board, is we've tried to do an analysis of golf course or lots in Village of Pinehurst jurisdiction that are vacant, which also have more than one applied golf course setback. So I don't think it paints the picture it seems like that you would be asking.
Can I speak? I understand what you said, Mr. Jack, about golf balls and different things like that. But from what Ms. Bennett said, as far as all the golf balls that have, because I've been on the property too, and I've been on the property when they hit golf balls and they come on the other side where the original side of the kitchen's on now. And as far as on the other side, there's not any near the golf balls or whatever it is coming on that side. Even if with the vegetation, there'd still be more golf balls that'd be getting hit within that 14-foot area. And the uniqueness of what we're trying to do, we understand that there's more. We already know there's more lots that's 3-sided. We understand that, but what we're looking at is not that as far as with it being on 3 sides. What we're trying to look at is the hardship as far as with the property to make the house work and be livable and to be able to use the house that she's bought. You know, this is going to be her lifetime house, and she's going to be able to use this house and enjoy it, and to be able to use it to get the work or get the kitchen and make it functionality the way she wants it. The only way we could do it is to put it on that side, because we went round and around. We've changed it several different times trying to make this property work, or this floor plan, or make the house work for her to be able to use it. But with the plumbing, with the structural issues, with the load bearing problems, we cannot, there's no other way, no other place to do it. And in our last talk with the designer, we sort of had to put a hold on things till we come and met with y'all, because we had no other place that we could put as far as making the kitchen functional, be able to give her what she wants. Because like I say, we went 2 or 3 times, we went back and met with the designers, trying to figure out how to make it work. We've talked to an engineer, and some of the things, the way the house is set up now originally, we cannot expand it out to be able to make it work and make it functional.
There is room on the north and on 2 other sides. You're not even up against the variance to actually extend in that direction. Is that correct?
As far as on the garage side and the very back side,
Right, where the deck is, and also on the 8th hole side. I'll use the north side, yeah. So
Well,
there's
and
room in the setback to actually extend the house in that direction. Is that correct?
you said on where the garage side's at?
On the, well, north side,
North
let's say
side.
northeast, yeah,
Yeah. But
northwest. And also on the deck side, you're not even close to the variance, to the setback on that side. In addition, there's, with the 20-foot setback that you currently enjoy on the one side, there is room within the other parts of that structure to enhance and enlarge. Is that correct?
yes, but to be functional, to make it work, we cannot use because of the plumbing. Plumbing is one of the biggest issues of why we wanted to put it on the back side.
We don't do design work here.
I know, but I'm just saying, that's one of the biggest issues was the plumbing, to be
Yeah.
able to make this thing work. That
We
was
don't
one
do
of the biggest
engineering or
reasons.
design work,
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
fly here.
yeah.
That's not what we're here for.
Right. Well, that was one of the reasons, like with the garage and this other little area coming off from the garage going into the house is all concrete. And the way it's laid out, we would not be able to get our plumbing through the house to be able to tie it in to make it work.
Certainly not easily, that's
No.
for sure.
In the place, I think that's why I address the number of golf balls that we get, because the place where there is room to the setback is the part where it would get bombarded with the errant golf balls on the deck side and that other side, because that's the side of the golf course that the tee box is, and we get the errant golf balls from that side. So that's why we didn't want to expand into that that area that's available.
But you would be putting the house 14 feet away from an active golf course on the other side, is that correct? If you were granted the variance.
Correct.
Just a small corner of it. We're not pushing the whole entire side of the house that would go out. It's only a corner that's going to go into the setback.
Roughly 45 square feet.
Approximately, yeah, just approximately 45 square feet. And it's just that corner that's going to exceed to get closer. So it's not the whole side of the house that's going to be 14 feet away from the golf course. It's just the small corner, approximately 45 square feet.
Alex, can you pull up the aerial view of the, I guess, the satellite image that basically represents that?
The aerial here with showing the landscape, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just curious, because I mean,
I can zoom in a little bit with the PDF.
I understand the way, your point, Jack, that it does bring it, it makes the setback technically 14 and a half feet, but if you compare the holes on each side, active golf course is active golf course, but this picture appears to show much more room on the right side between what I'd call the actual active area of that hole. But people can disagree as far as what an accurate area is on a golf course, because everybody does hit it slightly differently, so.
For sure.
But, and I do, one question that I did have, which you brought up a good point, Jack. Most of the vegetation does appear to be on the golf course property. Are there any trees or anything on your property that would be affected by the addition?
No.
You don't plan
No.
on removing any
Nope.
trees, shrubs, anything like that?
Nope.
David, I would like to mention, again, as was, noted earlier with these imagery, that this is approximate, so I don't know
Very approximate.
how accurate the boundary line is. Obviously, you can see how the building, how the building footprint outline appears to be much closer than 20.55 feet to that property line. So I don't know if we could really validate beside a survey where the trees are actually located.
Yep.
Has a survey already been done on the property?
Yeah, this survey, yeah.
What was the date of the survey?
Actually, it doesn't have a date on it.
Do you have a drawing that has surveyed boundaries on it?
Yes, the one we got now has got, this is the only one we got right here that's got the boundaries on it. It don't have the golf course boundaries on it. It's just got the property lines and the setbacks.
Is that the same one that we have here?
Yes, you got the same thing we have.
It looks like I didn't see any irons noted on this drawing, or maybe there were some and they were cut off. Did they find any markers out there?
Yes, I found all the markers.
Okay. They just didn't put them on the drawing or note them.
I think in listening to Jack's line of questioning, he raises an excellent point that our golf courses here in Pinehurst, do change, and they like to do that as styles, trends change in the golf world. But I think it's important to note, as Alex did, that Mr. Farron did say that the resort has no objection to this encroachment. So at least at this point in time, there is nothing contemplated that should put the active field of play up against your home.
I got a question. You talking about the golf courses getting changed a lot, Jack? As this golf course, has it ever been changed or
Oh,
moved
yeah.
around?
Oh, yeah.
Been-
Many
been
times.
recently, or how long has it been since it was?
Well, recently,
active?
recently, within the last few years, number 5 has changed because the first hole, which used to be on the other side of the road, is no longer there. And the first hole of what used to be number 3 is now the 17th hole of number 5. And so, as you might know, number 3 has been radically designed.
Oh, yeah.
New holes put in there.
Right.
They've graded and moved fairways around. And so number 5 has changed quite a bit in the last few years, as a matter of fact.
I do believe the changes that were done when 5 was most recently changed, because it used to be holes 8 and 9, because they did away. So now it's holes 7 and 8, but the layout of
That
the
layout
holes
has.
did not change.
They have not started any work on that course just yet, that's correct. But the reality is that the course can change and has changed. Other courses have changed, and the resort has been very proactive in making changes to the courses as they need to and see fit. So there's, like I said, there's no guarantee that that vegetation, which you benefit from, which is substantially in the on the golf course property, is going to be there in the future, and you may be far more exposed than you realize. And I really go back to the fact that this is not a unique situation. You're having golf course 30-foot setbacks on multiple sides. It's not in any way, shape, or form unique. There's courses, among number 5, there's a number of them. And number 3, if you look at a map in number 3, an aerial of the number 3 area, and look at the plots and also the roads, like on the GIS system at Moore County, you'll probably find dozens and dozens of lots that are very similar, particularly at the end of almost every cul-de-sac. This is true on almost every course, number 6, number 7, 3, 5, you name it. Even number 4 and even number 2, surprisingly. There's a course that's very similar, lot that's similar to this between number 2 and number 4. So this is not a unique situation, and which is very concerning that it doesn't really qualify in my mind in that respect.
To the tree point, I agree that the golf course could do something in the future. We could also, it's rare, but a tornado or hurricane that could, or an ice storm that could take down some of the trees that are there. So that's less of an issue. Who's controlled, and vegetation can change at some point, so.
Question is, we're talking about vegetation, and there's vegetation on both sides. If you look at the lot, look at the aerial view, there's trees on both sides of it. But like she said, on the other side, on the north side, you're getting a lot of balls. When you were out there the other day, did you see a bunch of balls on the south side?
I wasn't
Jack?
picking up balls. if that's what
I know you weren't. I'm just saying, you were out there viewing it, looking around, and that should have been one of the things you were looking for as far as what we're talking about is golf balls. Did you see any on this side, or did you see any on the other side? as you
I
were
wasn't
walking?
looking for golf balls.
Yeah.
I was looking at the structure relative to the golf course and the golf course lines and so forth, and whether it made sense, and whether it was a particularly unique situation, and it
Well-
didn't seem to be unique to me.
Well, but there are a number of factors at play. One of them is the fact that we've got this five-sided property surrounded on three sides by golf courses. The other is the placement of that, I believe you said southeast side, right near the tee box. And that's an additional situation, which is part of the land as it currently stands, and is, I don't know how unique. I don't know how unique it is to have a tee box right near a three-sided property. And then you add to that the siding of the existent house. They did you no favors with where they sided the house. They didn't give you a whole heck of a lot of room to play
Or
and
helpful
put
if
you.
they centered the
Right,
property, and it's not centered at
No,
all.
and they put you, over the setback line. So that is a unique thing. In my mind, it's not just the fact that we've got a cul-de-sac property surrounded on three sides. It's the site location of the current property and also that tee box and its proximity to you.
And although it may not be unique to have 3 golf course sides on a property, as you mentioned, the locations of the plumbing, existing utilities within the home, and what would be required to situate things otherwise, I think is.
But isn't that sort of self-imposed? I mean, you want a particular design, you want a particular addition, you want the house to have certain characteristics. That seems to be a self-imposed design criteria.
I think if it comes down to the load-bearing parts of the structure and what can be accommodated, I don't view that as self-imposed. I do agree with you that the design standards that are sought out and, what would be achieved is a self-imposed.
To clarify, when you talked about not clearing trees on the addition side on the property, just to be clear, so it appears in one of the pictures, on the numbers, on the southeast side, that I guess there's trees in the current setback. Are any of those, so no trees need to be cleared at any way?
I'm sorry if this sounds a little elementary dumb, but you're not going to move the other side of the house 14 feet away from the golf balls, 14.5 away, right?
Right.
Okay, all right. Are you doing anything else along that side of the house to protect the home, to do anything to help with your golf ball situation in this remodel?
On the other side of the house, we're not adding any windows, or we're not moving the house any closer on that side at all.
So you're very cognizant of it, but there's no like defense that you're doing. You're not doing anything else during this remodel. We're not moving the home away from the golf balls to get away from them further, and we're not doing anything else. Like I don't know what there could be, but you're not making any steps further to deter the golf ball problem, right?
No, because there's really nothing you can do as far as, if you put brush or anything like that, there's really not much you can do to put up to deter, no.
Not gonna think.
Well, you can put some plants around the house, but it'd take years for the trees or anything to get big enough to even accommodate what you're saying.
Understand. Like I mentioned, elementary question, but I wanted to verify.
Well, no, that's, into our discussions of how, you know, we wanted to expand the house, and we were trying to work with the footprint that is there and only expand minimally, you know, what we had to work with what was there already.
Could I ask you about those air handlers that Jack mentioned? Are you planning on resiting those, or are they going to stay on, you know, right outside of the kitchen in the encroachment?
No, they'll be moved, and they won't move towards the course. They're going to be rerouted to
We're gonna move
another
them down,
spot.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So they won't be put back into the approachment anymore on the property as far as the setbacks.
Okay, thanks.
Actually, they're gonna be putting new ones in anyway, so they are getting moved.
They're going closer to the garage.
Yeah.
So the only part that's going to be extending into the setback is the triangle, the 45,
45
whatever it
square
is. But, I mean, what that does, what the renovation includes is essentially that entire triangle there. Drawing on the wall of the house, or the rectangle, sorry, on the wall of the house, basically from the deck down.
The whole wall will go out 6 feet, but because of the angle of the house placed on the property, it's only a corner,
That's
that corner that will encroach on the setback.
Mentioned that's where the kitchen is going to be. What is the other room? What else is part of that 6-foot addition?
A mudroom and laundry room.
There be a second-story renovation to this?
Well, there will be,
Well-
on that one side where Jack was talking about, it's a flat roof. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover that up because it's really not big enough to make a room.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna extend the roof on out so we don't have any problems with the roof leaking because it's a rubber roof up there. And I don't like flat roofs.
We're not adding to the
We're
second
not
story
adding
at
to
all.
it, no.
Okay, but at the
No.
current roof pitch line,
Will
you're
be
just going to
extended, yes. It's just
extend
gonna
it
extend
out.
on down
Okay,
and cover that
for
roof up.
synthetic reasons.
Yes.
So, Ms. Bennett, how long have you lived in the home?
We purchased it in May.
Okay. Do you currently live in it? Okay. All right. So you've lived in it for 6 months. All right. Can you help me understand what parts of the home are not currently, as Randy mentioned, livable today versus post renovation?
Well, I think the setup of the home is, I mean, when it was built back in 1980, it was very closed off, and the rooms were very compartmentalized. Like the kitchen's at the opposite end of the house, the living space is at the total other end of the house. The laundry room's in the center of the house. It's a really unique house.
Sure.
And I'm not sure what they were thinking when they designed it, but just,
Outdated floor plan,
yes.
difficult to
Yes,
live in, but not
it's-
unlivable, right?
It's, yes, very choppy, and the flows is not very good, and it's just not livable the way it is right now. So the way our lifestyles are now, you know, people are much more interactive, you know, when you entertain or have people over, or just, you know, your lifestyles. People are much more open and not working in, you know, separate rooms of the home all the time. You know, much more social and interactive.
And she knew when she come in buying this house that it was going to need to be remodeled. She already knew that. She understood that to start with.
Just for clarity, I know this seems to, but you are aware that our job today is to really justify your hardship as really unnecessary as we strictly, and strictly is the key word, apply our current ordinances, right? And so in my effort to justify your hardship and to understand with what you've given, I think on your application, as well as some things that we've stated today, you know, if I go back to your application, which to me is one of the first things that I go to during this, is the hardship was mentioned as an addition to the backside of the property would not be possible. You know, I think that we a lot of times understand the hardships involved with a golf course lot, certainly on 3, and really what I'm going to call the restrictions, what I'm going to call the difficulties involved. And then, of course, we get into the nuances and the details of, did you buy it on like that, or did you want it, or remodels, and that's kind of where we are. But you mentioned an addition. So that makes me need to justify that the addition is needed, okay? And would be, and if not given to you, would be a necessary hardship. And that's what I've got to, in my mind, come to that conclusion. And so can you speak to that a little further, for us as a board, about the hardship in general today, as you've lived in the home for 6 months, and how, in reality, it's a hardship by that strict application of the ordinance on you for the setback?
Well, the home is just very divided inside. I think it has had previous additions before, because just looking when we checked out the foundation, the crawl space underneath, you can tell that the original home was here, and then they added a piece here and added a piece here, I think, and then I think the garages were added. So I don't know that the thought process was any rhyme or reason to why things were added. So your kitchen's here, the bedroom's here, the laundry's in the middle, there's just rooms that are missing that, we would need. I don't have space for a laundry room. We don't have like a mud room to come in. There's just no space, no flow to the house. It's just very piecemeal from here to there. And to try to get the home to open up so we can open up with the existing second floor that's on there, like Randy had said before, changing the load-bearing walls and such, and trying to open that up, but taking into respect the second floor that's there and not having to redo the whole second floor, just trying to work with the structure that's there and not change all the load-bearing walls and such.
Randy, you mentioned that plumbing was probably one of the number one reasons to move.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues is the plumbing, trying to get the plumbing around the house. And the way that back corner is set up, that's the only place we could really put the kitchen and the laundry room to make it work.
So help me, you also mentioned some concrete. Is that some concrete slabs throughout the home
Well,
versus the rest of it?
if you
Crawl
look
space,
at
help me.
the plan, the way the plan's set up now where the garage is.
Yeah.
Then for some reason, I don't know if there was, it's almost like you got the garage, and then you've got this little small octagon-looking area on this, right off the garage. And then if you go on back further, that used to be the original garage. And like I say, the garage now was added on to. It's
Addition.
It was an
And so it's a
addition way
slab.
back, It's on
It's on a
slab.
slab.
And all of that is on a slab.
So,
All the way right there where you got your air at. Keep going with it.
so that part of the home is on a slab, so
All
you're
that's on
not
a
able
slab.
to, in reality, easily move the plumbing. Crawl space in the remainder of the home?
Right.
Varying depths underneath it, I believe. Okay, but just for my clarity, can
Right.
that be dug out it could ultimately be dug out to any height that you wanted, well, until that there's some structural area of the home, is that correct?
Right.
So you could dig out in that crawl space to provide other areas for the plumbing, or could not?
Well, where the plumbing line is running, it would just be a whole lot easier. Like I say, I know it would be tough. It could probably be done. But, I even had a plumber out there looking at it, and we crawled up under the house to take a look at it. But to make it more fun, easier to work with, and to make it work where we wouldn't have any problems later on, would be better to come off in that back corner.
Okay.
Because I think the 2 trees that are in the front of the house too,
Yeah.
we don't want to disturb those trees.
Sure.
Yeah, we done like 3 different times, and we finally got to this plan that we knew we could work. Like I said, we dealt with an architect, talked to an engineer, we talked with the designer and all, and we went and looked, and we checked for load bearings and different things. And, and the way the house is designed, as far as like coming off the back deck, the way the house is designed, that's a big open living room, and it's vaulted all the way to the roof. So it's gonna be really hard to try and come out with some kind of design to come off the back of that to make it work. We've looked at that too. This is our third drawings to try and figure out how to make this house work, make it functional, and be able to build the house and remodel it without getting into issues with the load bearings and different things else that was going on in the roof. Because it is a second floor above it, which
You
makes it
mentioned,
even more difficult.
mentioned that you have had an engineer take a look at the home.
Yeah, we've had a guy come out, we have, our designer come out and look at it, and they talked with the engineer about some of the stuff that had to be going on in it, and that was gonna be our best option.
Do you mind naming who the engineer is?
It's somebody that, our designer uses, Enrique.
Okay, okay. All right, so my last question, just for clarity, so the survey that we're working with today, again, is it the one that was maybe purchased when you purchased the home, that it come along with it, or I'm trying to get the validity of the survey. Let me ask this question. Where did we come up with the 14.5?
Yeah, I guess, what's the significance of the 6 feet? Why is 6 feet required?
Yeah, where did we come up with the additional 6 feet or the exact to a 14.5? Can you help me understand
Well,
that?
the adding on the 6 foot was the design of the kitchen to make the kitchen work, to make it more functional.
I think it was I'm sorry, along with the kitchen, though, the mudroom and the laundry
Right.
room, back in that space to be able to accommodate those on the same side so that we could then route the plumbing from the laundry to move it out from the center of the house and not have, there's the electric panel is right there. So we couldn't move the electric panel. We had to reroute the plumbing and from the laundry and from the kitchen around that obstacle, plus the foundation
Okay.
also.
So we're working from the house plan out and needed 6 feet. Okay, so that's where we kind of came from to that.
Right, right.
Right.
And then also that we were working around the 2 trees that are right on the other side of the house.
Yep.
There's one that's right in that courtyard that's at the front of the house. And then there is another one that is right in front of the house. So to not disturb those trees, but be able to route the plumbing.
Right.
Because it breaks my heart to cut those trees down. 'Cause
Those
they
trees
had
are a
people
long
out
way
there.
from your addition. I mean, one
No,
of
she's
them,
talking about on the front of the house itself.
On
when
the
you
front
come
of
in
the house?
driveway. We've tried to do an addition on the front of the
oh,
house.
okay.
That was one of the options.
Yeah, that was our first
But we
option
would have
to
had
do.
to have cut those trees down, and those trees, I had people out to look there. They've been there a lot longer than we have, and in my mind, they deserve to stay there.
One of my last questions. So Randy, what are we going to do if your variance is approved and you are given 6 more feet currently? And then after a survey is done on the property, you find that that only would then allow you 5 more feet of a home addition. So,
They'll allow you only the 5 foot?
yeah, so what if we find that after you have a survey on the home, that the numbers that we're working with today there's some variance in that, there's some approximates in that?
Well, if we have to shorten the house up a little bit, that won't be a problem. We can probably shorten it up if we need to. We don't want to, but if the board sees fit that we need to shorten it up to keep it within that 14-foot, 5 and a half or whatever, that won't be a problem.
Just please understand, you're measuring from the house plan out. Okay, so we would give you the variance from the property line in.
Right.
Which could ultimately be 2 different lines.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, that won't be a problem.
Can you state, and I may have missed this in the application, or the existing square footage compared to the proposed square footage of the home?
The actual existing square footage of the total house, I don't think we have that.
It was 2745, I
Is
think,
that what was on
roughly.
2745? That
I
was the
believe.
original?
Mm-hmm.
And any idea what it is in this current proposed design?
Let's see.
Looking for a percentage
We
increase.
probably adding it with the 6 foot is extending on down, the other part that's gonna be within the setback, it's probably gonna be about another 180 foot altogether that we're adding on.
Have there been any efforts to, I guess, reconfigure the mudroom, laundry room, kitchen within that wall?
Yes, we've tried it, like I say, this is our third attempt with the designer to try and figure out how to make this work.
Because I think the electric panel for the center of the whole entire house sits right in the middle of that design.
Yeah, that was another issue.
So we had to work around that, and the plumbing were the two big issues to work around to be able to accommodate things on that side of the house.
But the reason of putting everything on this side of the house was because of the structural issues and trying to design
Well,
the house to where
I
we
understand,
could add it to
I
it.
understand putting everything on this side of the house. But, you know, maybe, because looking at the drawing of the house, looking at the kitchen, which walls here would be new? I'm looking, can we pull up the picture of the inside? So on the kitchen, we go to the half wall right there. Is that a pantry? Are those walls going to be new? What's going to be open there?
That's existing.
What's existing there?
The other wall next to the island, in front of the island, there's a full wall that's going across there now. That room actually now is a bedroom.
So the walls, everything we have here is
Everything in there is
what's
coming out,
proposed.
is gonna be removed, yes, sir.
So I guess what's stopping from keeping where the walls are? Where's the electric panel in reference to this? I keep hearing the center.
Right up from that intersection of the 30-foot setback line that crosses through there where it intersects. Right
Next wall
there,
to
that
your
dark,
left.
yep,
Right there.
that dark part right
Yeah.
there in the center.
That's about right.
Electric's all right there.
Mhm.
Ask a question to staff. Can I do that? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Well, sorry, I just didn't. Say, Alex, so let's say the variance is given, but no survey is done. How will we verify that they would not be over the variance given?
So like any application for single-family residential additions, alterations, new, if there's going to be, if the proposed addition were to be within 5 foot of a setback, which this would, we would require a foundation as well as a final survey to ensure compliance with whatever applicable setback there is.
Foundation survey as well. Okay, thank you.
Alex, I understand that the current setback of the 20.55 runs along the length of the property boundary. If we entertained going to 14.5 or 15 or, whatever, is it possible to condition it so that that new setback does not run along the property line, but only incorporates the 45 square feet that are contemplated on, I understand that may be hard to enforce, but it's possible to condition?
Sure, I think I would probably like to encourage the board, if there were to be a real motion considered to that effect, a little more specificity so that we could administer that. But yes, my take on that is that a condition similar to that, limiting that encroachment of that extra 6 foot plus or minus within an area limited to wherever here you want to put, would be considered reasonably related to this request. Whether it be as, to be as depicted on Exhibit H, and to not extend past the existing garage. I mean, I'm just throwing things out.
Spitballing, yeah, I understand.
You could use the old
for a bearing. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Just to keep,
You know,
a 35-foot monolith from going up, right along that line
Sure.
with a future owner.
maybe a better thought were to be, if that were to truly be entertained, based on maybe evidence given by the applicant, if we've got an approximate square footage total area, so we know the proposed, as has been noticed for this hearing, is 6 feet. For this dimension out, you could condition it to a dimension of, I believe in my discussion with the applicant, it's approximately 15 feet, so no more than 20, or to limit it to a 20-foot run into that area, out, back to the 20.55 current encroachment. It's a bit cumbersome, but that's,
Could you do it in
I
terms of
don't-
an area of encroachment, like the
like a square footage area, I think so, that's an opportunity. It's an objective standard
I don't
that we could
completely
check.
understand all this. It's not our job to be designers or engineers or to, design the house or anything like that. I mean, it's our job to determine whether or not a hardship exists related to this property, and whether that hardship is unique to this property. And
assume you're not
whether it
disagreeing.
justifies a variance. And the only hardship that I've heard, I don't mean to be, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but the only hardship I've heard is that the house is not as you would desire it to be. The configuration of the house, the interior is not as you would like it to be, and you would like to expand the house, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying whether that qualifies as a hardship, I have a hard time understanding that, because this is not unique to this property. This is not a unique property within Pinehurst. Now, the other part is you really focus clearly on the safety issue. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, most of that vegetation is on the golf course side of the property line. And if that vegetation were to disappear, you'd be very close to an active golf course, and I can tell you right now from my experience is that that's a very popular place to put the balls, kind of 150 to 200 yards off the tee, at least on the eighth side, fairway, on the seventh fairway side, and you'd be very exposed. So your safety would not only be guaranteed, it would be highly exposed, in my opinion. This is a safety issue. The safety depends upon the vegetation protecting you from the golf course. There's no guarantee that vegetation is going to be there. To move your house closer to the golf course does not seem wise. And it just doesn't seem to qualify, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, a hardship, one person may not view a hardship, it may not be one to them, but not being able to use your home in a way that you desire, or what is livable. It doesn't mean that there needs to be, again, no reasonable use can be made, because technically you could still live here without these done, but it is a current hardship that, it affects the way you live, it affects your enjoyment of the home and what you viewed as your potential use when you purchased it. You didn't have anything to do with those setbacks. Back to, Jack's point earlier, it is a choice to design a certain way. I'd like to see, I think, just more detail in what the lines are before commit. Like, say it ends up being 5.5 feet. It sounds like a small number, but we don't want to commit to 6 if the kitchen's actually only going to extend, 5.5. So, not because of what you'll do with the home, but just because of what that could mean for future users. Whatever happens for the variance applies to the lot, whether you own it or not, so.
What we're looking at and thinking is like what Alex said, as far as y'all as being the board, there's stipulations, or whatever you put in, if you agree to what we're trying to do, the stipulations will be in there, what y'all would say is this is what we can do. We can only be at 20'5" coming off the property line, which we would have to abide by anyway. So everything's gonna be stipulated by what you say anyway. We can't just build it and then come up and say, well, we at 19'5". We got to build it with what the board comes up with. You know,
No,
as
it
far
seems
as
like
your
the other-
amendments, or what do you decide we can and can't do?
Yeah, well, the other part of the hardship seems to be it's more difficult or more time-consuming and/or more expensive, realistically, to redesign and staying within the footprint or within the setbacks. So that doesn't, in my mind, that doesn't seem to rise to the hardship level.
So I have some comments, but I'm trying to figure out if they fall under deliberation or under where we are right now.
I think we're deliberating.
Are we deliberating?
We can
Well,
deliberate during the hearing.
Well, yeah, and the hearing is intended to solicit and receive testimony. So, you know, if there's questions or comments that board members or others may have that may warrant or seeking additional information, factual evidence on the application, then now is the time, because once the evidentiary hearing is closed, then it is strictly just deliberation amongst the board, maybe procedural questions of staff, and again, to clarify, you know, the comments that I were making on that condition of a potential condition were to entertain solely the comment or question made by Board Member Latham and not to, I'm not a voting member of this board, and I'm, you know, not representing the applicants either. I'm just here to call balls and strikes and help where I can.
I think we're deliberating now, and it's best to deliberate while the hearing is still in place, then we can ask questions and/or you can give us additional information.
So I guess I'd look at the hardship and looking at the four kind of qualities that need to be in place. I agree, the three-sided is not altogether uncommon. But overall, I think the position of the house on the lot is unique. It's offset in nature in regards to the plat boundary, does, to me, appear to be unique. And again, haven't done this as long as you guys have, but I would say hardship in one regard looks at the factors that are gonna cause the improvement to cost way more than is reasonable for the value of the house. And to add, you know, a renovation that also adds 200 square feet, you know, there's things that are reasonable to do in that category and that fall under what's reasonable, and there's things that I would say subjectively would constitute, you know, a hardship financially for a house like that because of its, you know, size and age and all those things. So, I, you know, in my mind, I can kind of get there as I'm moving through these points. But it's the way it is on the lot. If you're gonna make improvements at a 6.5% square footage increase, and do that in a way to not clear trees, I mean, I think that's achieving the spirit of the law, which is keeping, you know, it's keeping the boundary in place, you know, the existing trees that are protecting the look and the feel from the course. I mean, I think wherever your house is on the lot like that, you're going to get golf balls. So, yeah, I don't think the safety is a strong an argument, but I don't think it has to be. I think the position of the house on the lot makes it such that it seems it's positioned to be difficult because of where it was built, you know, 40 years ago.
Because it does sound like we are kind of getting into deliberation right now. I think we have gotten plenty of input from the applicant and her contractor as well. At this time, do we have any more questions that you feel have gone unanswered?
I have one question, just for clarification here. So Enrique, who you're working with on your plan design, Artiga? That is, okay, just for clarity. Okay, so that's who you're working with, and that's who we're taking a lot of information from. I'm familiar with him from a plan design standpoint.
Right.
Are you familiar, and he's not here to speak for himself, but do you have any sort of evidence that would speak to his architectural background, training? Does he have any, I'm not aware of him being an actual truly trained architect. Is that right, or is he?
No, he's not. He's more of a designer than architect. He's not
Okay.
licensed.
And we don't know who he's brought in necessarily in their qualifications to do the load-bearing justification on the home.
Actually, like I say, he deals with an engineer out of Seven Lakes. I can't think of the guy's name offhand, but that's who he deals with as far as for his engineering or whatever.
It's Seven Lakes Engineering is the name of the firm.
Who is it, one more time?
Seven Lakes Engineering. I don't know the licensed
I can't think.
structural engineer, but our department does receive documentation from them.
Periodically, but not pertaining to this application.
Absolutely not.
But they did have, there was an engineer that came out. They did send out, while they were working on the plans, they did have an engineer come out and look at the property.
Sure, and please understand, a lot of times we get very specific in nature
Yeah.
just to kind of take the steps forward. Okay, thank you.
Questions for the applicant at this time?
You don't happen to have a tree survey of the property, do you, by any chance? No, okay.
No, I did have discussions with, Bob Farren came out and walked the property, and we had talked to him about, what we were going to do, what we would like to do.
Since he's not here, what we can do is reference his conversation with Alex, but as far as discussions that you've had, if he's not here to present those, unfortunately, we can't consider
Okay.
what might have come up during those conversations.
Okay.
Do you guys have any other questions for us or any other points that you'd like to present at this time?
I guess my biggest concern for the hardship is that the fact that we do have a unique property in the way that the house was positioned on the lot, prior to us owning the lot, and with the 30-foot setbacks on the three sides and the large amount of frontage that we have, I mean, it's over 61% that prohibits us from doing 61% of our property. We cannot,
Can I stop you there? The 61% you calculated using the 30 feet on all sides, but you really don't have 30 feet on one side. You will have 20 feet. So,
I use the 30 feet on,
30
correct.
feet times the
Correct.
total lineal feet of the.
The original setback was
Right,
30
okay,
feet on
but
all sides.
We
and it
don't
was
have that now. You have a legal 20.55 feet, so it's really not 30 feet on that side.
on that side, so it might be maybe closer. It could be adjusted maybe to closer to 50%.
Well, whatever the number is, I just wanted to point that out.
Right, but that is a pretty big hardship to work within the amount of area that we have to work with, given that restriction on that many sides. Plus, we also have the golf course on three sides, but plus we have the 30-foot setback from the roadside that we have to deal with too. And I didn't enter that into the calculation. I just did the calculation of the golf course sides. So given where the house was placed and those many setbacks on five sides, it,
More than 60% if you count all of it.
that is a hardship to try to accommodate where the house originally was put and to not encroach on any setback.
Randy, let's say that you are interested in doing your remodel and expansion and not encroaching on the current setback at 20.55.
Right.
And you were going to go garage. And this gets into Matt's point of what's feasible. Is it feasible? Could it be done, considering that you have part of the home on a concrete foundation versus part of the home on a crawl space foundation? Could that even be done? Or help me understand that. Let's say you would do that.
The biggest concern I would have right now to be able to even make that work, like say, it would be tight, but I'd had to get a plumber out there to make sure, but we, like I say, it's gonna be tight, even trying to get the water, get the sewer lines in. Water lines is not a problem. The only thing I'm concerned about is the sewer lines.
In your expertise, I know you've been doing this for a really long time. How long have you been building?
86.
86. Okay, so in your experience, would it be feasible to provide any sort of expansion of the home along that side? Thank you.
Questions for the applicant that you'd like to get addressed? If there's nothing further, you're more than welcome to either stay there. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to address anything? Okay. Well, if there are no further questions or anything, I would like to, I feel like we've gathered as much as we can, so I'd like to close the testimony portion and start our deliberation.
I move that we adjourn the public meeting and return to our regular meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion by Julia Latham to adjourn the public hearing and rejoin our regular meeting, seconded by Jeremy Hooper. All in favor?
Aye.
We're now back in our regular meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We just want to thank y'all. We appreciate you for your time tonight. Thank all of you.
Thank you for coming. Well, I guess I can just start would anyone like to start with, I guess, any concerns or points that they'd like to have addressed?
I'll say that I do appreciate the fact that we've had some clarification on Jack's concern about the air handlers. I'm glad you went out there and took a look and knew, because we're not seeing that. So the fact that those are going to be relocated reduces somewhat the concern about the encroachment. And I appreciate Alex's guidance in how we might look at putting conditions on the request in a way that it helps mitigate what a future owner might do should we contemplate extending that or shortening that setback.
Well, I guess I don't have to reiterate my fundamental position, which is twofold. The hardship seems to be self-imposed in the sense that, yes, it's be difficult to expand in other directions, probably more expensive, but it can be done, albeit expensive and maybe not ideal. The hardship is not unique to this property. There are a surprising number of lots at the end of cul-de-sacs, particularly in Pinehurst, in all the courses that have this characteristic. So it's not unique to the property. The property does not create this hardship necessarily. I agree that it was awkwardly put within the building envelope, but then again, I'm not sure that anyone really, when it was built, looked at the building envelope at all, to tell you the truth. What was going on in 1980 was a little crazy, to tell you the truth.
What I disagree is, I guess, we have to take the property in the state that is taken today. So although there are similarly situated lots, similarly situated homes, this particular parcel, based off of the way the home is situated, based off of its specific location on the cul-de-sac, it is a uniquely situated property. The home is, arguably skewed in a way that if these specific regulations were in line, although there may have been some requirements on the golf course, those covenants and restrictions that were part of the deed, if these specific conditions were in place when the home was built, again, it likely would have been designed differently. I think based off of the current status and the position that they purchased the home in that sense, it is unique, and the conditions are peculiar to this specific property. I don't think they've done anything on their own fault to create or increase that hardship on themselves. I think it's all a situation of, based off of what's been presented and based off of what's in the record, it's not really their doing that's creating the hardship. Whether, yeah, I'll just look for any other.
The basic fact of wanting to expand the square footage is a voluntary act. I mean, that's not something that has been thrust upon them. It is something you choose to do. You choose to increase the size of your property.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a little bit of clarification on your position? Can you help me with what your current position is on the hardship? Yes, ma'am. Oh. Can you help me with what your current thought process is on what the hardship would be?
Well, I think what's written in the application and what has been presented are one and the same. The application on its face says the hardship is that in addition to the backside of the property will not be possible. Taken in conjunction with the testimony and evidence that we've had presented here, it's that a reasonable use of the home as the owners intend will not be possible without that addition. So that's how I read the hardship. Yeah.
I mean, hardship, hardship is such a subjective term. And for our General Assembly to pretend that we are looking at this objectively is a bit ludicrous. Because I would tell you, for me, I would find a hardship having a kitchen that is a galley kitchen that I could not easily navigate with another human being. I don't know if that's their situation, but if I saw the kitchen that, frankly, I grew up with in the early 80s, I would blanch. It would be a hardship for me to deal with that kitchen, particularly this time of year. And so while I really do understand your point, Jack, that, you know, it's a choice of a homeowner to remodel. And, you know, it's wonderful that these opportunities are available to us. I do see from my point of view, and it's the only point of view that I have accessible to me, that there is a hardship in having a kitchen that is 42 years out of conformity with the way we live and cook and entertain today. So, you know, can they still make reasonable use of the property? Sure, there are people in Afghanistan who would love her kitchen. However, from where I sit in our Pinehurst world today, I can say that there is hardship that happens when you're looking at a 40-year out-of-date galley kitchen.
Looking at
Well, the other part of this application has to do with safety and so forth. And I can tell you, having a structure 14 feet away from an active golf course, I mean, I know right now it looks like it's farther away, but it's not. And it's 14 feet away. And there are many buildings that are fairly close to the golf course, considerably farther away than 14 feet, that are constantly receiving a barrage of golf balls. I can tell you that from personal experience. And to reduce the setback on a golf course down to 14 feet requires, in my opinion, extraordinary measures in extraordinary situation. This just doesn't, in my mind, is a bit of an issue there.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on that. And if, the reason why I asked Alex a question I did about Mr. Farron weighing in is, to me, that his opinion in these regards carries heavy weight. And if we didn't have that information from that email, I think that this would absolutely be a slam dunk for me of, you can't do this. But because he has said that the resort has no objection, I'm thinking that he has to understand something about the field of play that I don't appreciate here.
Well, I play this golf course quite often.
Oh, I'm sure you, and I don't, and I do not. But, in my mind, he's the expert who.
I've seen many a golf ball bounce off the roofs and go into the windows of many, many houses near the golf course. So the safety issue becomes real. It's very, very real, as a matter of fact, particularly in the location that it's at. Just happens to be reasonably well protected by vegetation that is owned by the golf course. And as we all know, and anything can happen, quite honestly, to that vegetation.
I do believe that the interior part of the home, the floor plan, can ultimately be a hardship, certainly an outdated one. A lot to the same points that Julia mentioned. For me, it's substantiating that hardship, and I can't dream about it, okay? Not picking on the applicant. I mean, they brought what they could bring. But they haven't shown that the kitchen is anything other than a galley kitchen and uncomfortable. We have a general contractor with a vast amount of experience that I think at this point in time we can take as fact that certain things cannot be done to the floor plan, okay? I don't believe they can feasibly expand the home into the current setback appropriately, feasibly, that would probably result in some sort of construction factor that would need to be really detailed into play. The part I'm struggling with is, well, let me say this first. I'm not even taking into play the golf ball portion of this. That's not in my mind on where the hardship is. First off, the applicant mentioned it, but it's about the remodel. It's about the current updating, livability of the home, the aesthetics. And mentioned many times how it's not livable today. And of course, that's subjective, right? Because like you mentioned, it's certainly livable. You can live in it, but is it feasible to make someone live in a 40-year-old dated floor plan forever, right? The part that I'm struggling with is if we strictly applied the ordinance, does that mean there would be no remodel on the home? And she would not be able to update the floor plan in some livable manner? Would that mean that the things just would not happen? And that's the part that I'm struggling with, because I do believe that ultimately an outdated property, an outdated floor plan of a home could become a hardship. But I'm struggling with that. I'm throwing that out there just because I'm being honest. And so if anybody's got any feedback on it.
So my thought is, again, on a house that's 40 years old, performing a typical remodel, the contractor has shown that there are certain restrictions that make that remodel not typical, but what I would constitute a hardship situation, right? Plumbing, electrical, structural, and the footprint, right? So when you're doing a project, I mean, how we define hardship is in them trying to do this with the, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in looking at this project, is there a hardship created by the condition of the house, the lot, the property? And he seemed to explain to me the things that show this is, I mean, all these together, some of them separate on their own might not constitute that. But all of them together, this is where those factors, again, I mean, I'm not trying to design it. I couldn't. But they've determined that based on those factors, this is the best place for the kitchen and whatever, and this is the size it needs to do. And, I mean, I guess on top of that, the fact that they're managing trying to do that without disturbance to the buffer, I mean, I think is a significant effort that speaks to the other variance point of being consistent with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. So, like, that to me is enough of a hardship, and in cooperation with the spirit of the ordinance, that's how I get there.
Thought process from the outside of the house encroaching further into a golf setback at this point is that Pinehurst Resort doesn't object, so thus. Okay.
And the house will be just as protected by trees as it is today. I mean, there's no difference in, I mean, I've hit a lot of golf balls to houses, so you can find the holes in the trees regardless of what's behind it. But that's the risk they're taking. So I agree. I don't look at that as necessarily a factor.
What are the thoughts of imposing the, I guess, the condition on what could go there? I don't know if we can be that specific without further measurements.
Well, lack of better diction here doesn't hurt a neighbor. It doesn't hurt anybody. Pinehurst Resort has been given the opportunity to object. They have not. So how many 45 square feet into the setback, plus or minus, right? So again, we're absent of definitive facts. And I think that it would be our job to provide that definitive fact, and it would be the risk of the applicant at that point if it did not pan out. I do not agree with providing a setback the length of the property. I don't know if we do. I mean, is that safe to kind of, what it would be unless we were a little bit more factual?
No, I do think we have to find a way to, and I, defer to our engineer, to help find a reasonable way to condition that, because I certainly don't think that it meets the spirit of what the applicant is asking for, or the way that variances, the way that we would want the variance to be applied to have someone go in at a later date and, build a home right up against a 14.5 foot setback that goes the length of the property line and is 35 feet high. I mean, that would be.
That's an important point to make, because any variances that are granted do run with the property. So it's there in perpetuity.
Somebody could.
Somebody could.
Well, and at some point in time, neither here nor here, but the demand will come to go straight up at some point, my belief. Not specifically speaking to this property. I don't know, and what I struggle with is I don't know if it is our job to make a decision on it will not hurt. And that's what I struggle with. I mean, whether it's, I think we've had a variance of 11 square feet. I think in the past, I think we've discussed that. I think we've been very understanding to golf course lots and understanding of that. I have a hard time making a decision on it won't hurt. That's my difficulty.
Like, in determining what hardship is, or is that?
Well, the hardship is separate than that. But kind of to my point earlier when I led us down the path of it's only 45 square feet, I don't agree to coming into the whole length of the property, so we would need to be very specific. But then it leaves us with it's only 45 square feet. And then I just don't want that to become, at least in my mind, the deciding point. It really does need to be about the hardship. Okay? And I do believe that if we go down that path, that we do offer somewhere in the neighborhood of 47 square feet or 50, given the specifics.
If we did go that way, I would also want, maybe, I don't know if we could put this as a condition, but while the meets and bounds are on this drawing, I would like to see a drawing that has property corners, because without, that has irons or benchmark, because without those, it may be accurate into scale, but it's floating.
That's
So
kind of my whole point.
That would, that would verify that we're, if we say 45 feet into the setback, the existing setback, then that is reasonable if it is as where it's shown. But again, without something that shows where this is tied to, it's just floating.
So I really am trying to find, making the effort and looking for some factual information that substantiates the hardship of the livability of the current home.
Do I hear the two of you suggesting that you would like to entertain continuing this hearing to get a drawing with, oh, look at the,
It's already been closed.
oh, it's been closed. Well, we'd have to reopen it then, if that's where they were going.
So let me just kind of put this out there. I cannot make a decision based upon it doesn't hurt, okay? I cannot make a decision upon the whole length of the property. I don't believe that currently there is enough factual information that substantiates the livability of the home. That's where I am. And so to get to Jack's point, if we're going to make a decision that's encroaching further into the golf course setback, even though Pinehurst Resort may not object, then I would probably need, and I could list it, that type of factual information to move forward.
Well, we don't have the drawing. We do have the testimony of the homeowner and of the contractor. And they are able to give relevant factual testimony based on things that they have witnessed firsthand, which is what they did. And that is well within the rules of evidence. Yes, David?
She has lived in the home for over 6 months, so she understands a little bit of the livability, and their contractor has 35-plus years' experience. Okay. All right.
Does anyone at this time have a motion that they would like to present?
Can I make my usual statement?
Please.
Which I do typically do before motions of the board, is just, we have prepared a cheat sheet of sorts for you. A template is what it is, not a cheat sheet. But if there is any motion for action on this requested variance, that you kind of go through each one of the standards of review and state your reasons and why you've come to your conclusion.
So based off of what's been presented, I do feel that an unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance, because the owners won't be able to use and fully enjoy their home, as we've discussed, without this proposed addition. That's what I view as the hardship here. The hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property, although it's not uncommon to have a lot surrounded by golf course on 3 sides. The home is uniquely situated here, where it's already encroaching on one of those sides by, 9.5 feet roughly. So it's uniquely situated. It's at the end of the cul-de-sac, and they haven't done anything to do that, which brings me to point C. This hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. They've merely taken the home as it is, and in order to enjoy fully, they have proposed these renovations. And it is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured, substantial justice is achieved, From their own testimony, having lived there for 6 months, it's on what would be considered the safer side of the home, receiving fewer golf balls daily. They are minimally invasive to the surrounding neighbors. You know, they're not hurting any neighbors' views. They're trying to be harmonious with the area, with as limited of an intrusion as possible. So, you know, for me, it checks each box.
Would you like to talk about what condition, if any?
The condition, I would, so that it couldn't.
Don, Alex is making a face at me.
It's not at you, sorry.
Okay.
I don't have anything to say or didn't have a reaction.
Okay.
If I were to impose a condition on it after, you know, when the motion is made, the condition would be to restrict the intrusion to, you know, the portion of the home. If it's the, let's call it a 48 square foot triangle as shown on exhibit, what was it, exhibit H? That we've had here, if we restrict it to that portion is the only part that can encroach. You know, I think it limits the line that can be drawn if they want to go vertical over that 45 square feet over time, so be it. But I think limiting the extension of the structure down that 14-foot line is the concern, so the condition would be.
Can you manage that long-term?
I was just going to maybe provide some input. This is, similar language has been used before, and we have been able to easily administer that in-house. That a 48, I think, square foot, you said, as depicted or consistent with as depicted on Exhibit H. You may recall a previous application is consistent with some elevations that had been prepared, which we know were somewhat conceptual, a little bit further than conceptual at the time, and they were. So I think, obviously, any determination that staff's going to make is subject to, you know, any type of appeal or public review. So we would also have the record and recording of this hearing to go back to and how staff applied and made that determination. So consistent with the area depicted on Exhibit H, something similar to that, wordsmith how you like. I feel confident that me and my staff could administer that.
Basically, that would mean that if, in the scenario where this layout happens to be off by 5 feet because the irons are moved, they're still held to the true
48,
whatever, 14 and a half feet off of the.
to not exceed more than 14 and a half.
So if they
correct,
came
yes.
back and found, oh, well, the house is actually moved even more into the.
More than
existing easement,
20.55, it's 19.
they're still
19,
restricted
yeah.
to, well,
And the condition can be clear that no more than, you know, so that it would not be a greater distance than. And we, again, if that were to be the outcome, a survey would be, a surveyed site plan, I missed a step, a surveyed site plan would be required at application submittal, indicating then a foundation and then a final.
For clarity, if we extend this, go back into the meeting and extend it, what's our time frame? Again, just for clarity.
If the board were to try me again, Jeremy.
Reopen the meeting and recess the meeting.
I know we have at least one member who has a time constraint at the moment. You have to weigh, is there evidence that is needed? Is there really,
Well, let me ask you a question.
that can be obtained this
Correct.
evening?
And let me give you a little bit of reasoning behind my question, okay? It's if we requested further evidence. that would the applicant have the time to get that within our timeframe to make a decision? And I'm not saying we want to do that,
understand.
that's my question. if
Yeah,
that
I
makes sense.
understand. Like, you're thinking like statutory requirements for
If
making
we
by this
were
board.
to. 'cause
You're,
I'm
you're not bound. You're not bound by a 30-day, 90-day, 2-week timeframe in order
Okay.
to make a decision. The only tricky part is that the evidentiary hearing has been closed. It gets a little tricky about then reopening, closing again. It's, so.
Well, Jeremy has a good point, and as does Matt. I mean, we don't have a as-built plan, a recent as-built plan with all the documentation and the numbers and the location of the pins and so forth and so on. We have a fairly old plan, actually, working from. And in fact, to lay the new addition on top of a plan, it may or may not be 14.55 feet or whatever. It may be something more or less when we in fact look at an as-built survey.
And keep in mind, the decision by the board, to request that additional information, wouldn't necessarily have to be on how it's administered long-term, but how it meets the standards of review. So if I'm not trying to, state one thing and the other, as this board has discussed tonight, you're in the position that, very subjective terminology that each individual member has to come to terms with. Would that impact be, is it for staff to administer, or is it to, impact the property owner? So,
I don't think it impacts, knowing the numbers isn't going to change the hardship or the uniqueness of the property or if they affect it at all. So I think it does come down to staff being able to administer it, but I don't know if that.
Well, let me explain. It's okay. So for me to substantiate the hardship of the plan being unlivable, I think that ultimately it could not be remodeled if we strictly enforce the ordinance, that there would be no remodel take place, or then it still would not be livable at that degree. We could debate that.
That's a good point. How do you document it's impossible to remodel within the current environment?
For me to substantiate that, I would need pictures. I would probably need some elevations of what was the outside of the building. I probably would need some sort of information on some structural, survey or report that, and I'm not trying to spend the applicant's money. Structural report that documents the structural engineer that have currently reviewed the project. So in my mind, again, to substantiate the hardship, which ultimately I'm making an effort to do, those would be the numbers that I probably would need in my head. Because if we applied the ordinance as written, who is to say that it still would not be remodeled or able to be remodeled? And I think that's an answer that I would need.
Under A, with regards to unnecessary hardship would or would not result from a strict application, it says it shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. So it doesn't necessarily have to be impossible to do a remodel for there to not be hardship. It just has to be a certain level of hardship, right?
reasonableness.
Yeah.
And what is that to,
Explanation?
That was confusing to say.
Okay.
a couple double negatives in there.
So, yeah, so it doesn't have to be that if we don't grant the variance, there's no way to remodel the house. Certainly there is. It's more of a question of degree.
Reasonable use and degree,
In
right?
terms of how we evaluate
In,
hardness.
improbability or something, if that's a better way, not that you cannot.
Yep.
Is that, is it reasonable based on what has been given to you to
Right.
consider?
And then is that burden upon us or the applicant?
I understand. The burden of proof always rests with the applicant. However, the part of the evidentiary hearing is to receive that testimony. And at that point, if the board feels that additional information is needed for whatever individual member, and then the majority of, after voting, to subpoena or to request additional information, that is what the hearing is for. And unfortunately, we kind of moved a little past that.
Okay, no, understand. Okay.
Not that any of these, not that anything's wrong, it is
I'm
just procedure.
perfect.
And that language is not also from the development ordinance, but it is statutory that you just read.
That's fine, thank you.
Does anyone have a motion that they would like to make based off of that, I guess, determination at this time?
I move that the Board of Adjustment approve with conditions of variance and adopt the findings of fact. Can I say as stated, or I have some notes I can read if I need to, but he did state it.
It's your motion.
And adopt the following findings of fact. Unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. To reasonably update the home with consideration of the existing plumbing, electrical, and structural conditions and the existing footprint constraints would cause a hardship. The hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property, particularly the existing orientation of the footprint of the home on the lot being off-centered on the parcel and extending into the existing setback. The hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The existing home layout to include all the utilities and the footprint was as was built in 1980 prior to this application. And the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The addition extending into the clear space protected by existing trees and not being objected to by the golf course owner meets the intention of maintaining a buffer around the property and is consistent. With a condition to, pending exact wording from staff, restrict intrusion into the setback up to, I'm just going to say 50 square feet, up to a 14.5-foot setback from the existing property boundary.
Not to exceed 14 and a half feet, maybe, is that okay?
Yep.
Sorry, I asked him if he wanted to add consistent with Exhibit H.
Consistent with Exhibit H. Thank you.
So we have a motion by Matt Jones, who has made a motion to approve with conditions the variance based off of the findings of fact that he has stated. Do we have a second motion?
I'll second.
We have a second by Julia Latham. We'll ask for an individual vote. For my right, starting with Jack. Jack, what is your position?
No, disapprove.
Jeremy?
No, disapprove.
Julia?
Approve.
Approve.
And I would vote to approve as well. Because this does take a supermajority of 4 votes, the variance is not approved. So that's where we are. The total vote is 3 in favor, 2 against, so the variance has not been approved. Let's see here. we're in here at this point. So the general business has already been done. We've done the board organizational matters. Next meeting date as scheduled currently is January 6th, 2022. Any issues with that date? Does anyone have any questions at this time? Staff, do you have anything that we should be aware of for that date?
And I'm not aware of any business or applications that the board will need to consider. We will play it by ear, and David, I'll be in touch with you getting close to see if it may be prudent to approve minutes. We don't have a findings document now after the result of the vote to get dressed up and have signed to be recorded. We can get them signed by you, but not to be recorded since the motion to approve didn't carry. So we'll play that by ear as we get there and maybe see too how it relates to how the planning and zoning board agenda will shape up for that date.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's regular meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's regular Board of Adjustment meeting.
Motion by Jeremy Hooper. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Matt Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.